Amanda. Viva ANC, viva.
Viva.
Viva ANC, viva.
Viva.
Ngiyabonga comrade program director. Comrade Bohula Skosana. As they say, Musi. Umusi Skosana. The chairperson of the branch, Comrade Ruvimata, and the entire leadership of the branch. The branch invited me to say something because they didn't specify what I should focus on, except to say, come and address us. And I thought, comrades, the topical issue now that's affecting the entire world is the Palestinian question. And I thought it was important for me to touch on the Palestinian question, especially that in South Africa we are a highly Christianized country, and to a large extent we tend to confuse the Palestinian question with Christianity and Islam. So I thought it was important to ngikhulume ukuthi kwenzakalani ePalestine. I think ngiyabona nani ema-TV kuyadutshulwana kushona abantu, but you don't really understand why is the world not intervening. Why is the United States, which is one of the most powerful economies in the world and the most powerful military power in the world, it's not intervening. But they intervened immediately when Russia said to Ukraine, and the whole world, the United States and the entire West went to intervene in Ukraine. But when innocent civilians are killed in Gaza, no one intervenes. Now, as you know that on the 7th of October, Hamas would have launched an attack on the Israeli state. Now, we don't want to start on the 7th of October. Because if you start on the 7th of October 2023, you'll be missing the entire history of what has happened in Palestine. Now, in 1947, the United Nations came together after 1947 at the point where the Palestinians had welcomed and received a group of Jews that sailed from the West and went into Israel, in Palestine, to find accommodation in Palestine. Now, in 1852, we are told that unomkhumbi ubondlula la eSouth Africa uhamba noYan van Riebeeck makafika eSouth Africa eCape Town wama wacela indawo yokurefresh. Now the Jews in 1947 went to Palestine. When they arrived there, they requested a place to stay because in Germany and everywhere else in the world, they were tortured under what was called the Holocaust. You know the history of Hitler, who wanted to destroy all the Jews in Germany, ngaleso sikhathi. So basuka ke babaleke laphi ePalestine. But before they went to Palestine, bebayahlala somewhere in a meeting. I think the meeting was somewhere in Switzerland. Ahlala ke wonke amaJuda asemhlabeni ahlangana. Athi singaya kuphi sibe nelizwe lethu lamaJuda. Now, they then tried to use the Bible, but their first point of departure was actually not Uganda, where's Museveni? Uganda, yes. That was their first point where they thought they can go and settle. But then they said, no, let's trace the Bible to justify la siyohlala khona. Now, in the Bible, you know, it talks about amaJuda, Bible, wangamaJuda. to an extent that le rona re ba confused ya ka batho ba batsho or Majuda or ring. Especially Christians then get confused a lot. But we all know Banaba Israel, but not the state of Israel, but the Israel that was declared by the Almighty God as the land of the free children of God, isn't it? But we don't confuse this thing. The Israel is the Israel of the regime of the Jews who are anti the freedom of the Palestinians. So bafika ke babanika indawo. They then settled in Palestine. But over time, they started building their military might. They started building their own machinery. They started building a state machinery, using the influences that they have all over the world, which influence its economy. They started using that influence to build their state machinery. Now in 1967, the United Nations then declared, for the sake of bringing harmony and peace in Palestine, they then declared that this territory will belong to the Israelis, and this territory will belong to the Palestinians. And amongst that, it was Gaza. Gaza, it's actually your coastal area in Palestine. So coastal areas are an important economic node. That is why we have a coastal area in Durban, in PE, and in Cape Town. They are important for our economy because they provide, one, a harbor, so that we can trade with everyone else in the world. They also provide maritime economy in the form of fish and all sorts of things that come out of the sea, including the economy of diamonds that are mined from the sea. So maritime economy is a very important economy. Now, we know that the Israelis, or the state of Israel, have always wanted to rule over Gaza, so that they have access to the coastal area, and therefore they can control the entire economy of Palestine. So in 1967, then it was divided into Palestine and Israel. And Israel was given a very small space because in any case, they were very small people. But if you look at the map today, I should have brought the map. The entire map is now Israel. Now come back into South Africa. When they arrived in 1852, they then started stealing our cattle. 1652, what did I say?
18.
Oh, I said 18.
Indian British.
All the time. Now they then took over the land of our people. We know of the wars that then started to emerge when others amongst us mobilized against the settlers, as they were called at that time. Now we know that eventually we had one of the greatest war between Amabulu, which eventually, it was Amabulu and the British, which was called the Battle of Morero, or the Boer Anglo War. Now, as a result of that, even today, the Afrikaners are still angry towards us because of the Anglo-Boer War, and that's why Amabulu because of that war even today. But that war in itself then said the British can now eventually rule. I mean, the Afrikaner could therefore now rule over South Africa. And you know, eventually in 1910, they declared the Union of South Africa. But in all that, it meant they were taking over the land that belongs to us. Eventually, Africans were left with about 13 and 15% of the land, and the entire land was given to the white people of this country. Yenza le example because ngifuna ukunibonisa ukuthi nase-Palestine, the entire people of Palestine were left with just less than 15% of the entire land of Palestine. Ithathwa abantu bebavakashile bacela indawo yokuhlala, eventually they took their land. A simple example, nangu umuntu uzocasha kwakho umam stand, the next thing nomseka athathe umuzi wakho, athathe nendoda yakho, aqosha abantwana bakho. Is the same thing that has happened in Palestine. If I have to simplify it, Utama comrade, I understand. So lempi eyenzakalayo is Palestine, is the same fight for the freedom of the Palestinian people. Njengathi la salwa silwela impi enkululeko ukuthi Africans in particular should be liberated. Now, that's what is happening in Palestine. Now, the apartheid state of Israel then introduced very draconian laws since 1967 till today. And we can make simple examples that Palestinians are not allowed to drive on the freeways in Palestine. Now, kune freeway lesibiza iKiller Road, le lihlala phambi kwayo, just next door to stadium. The freeway ya akho umbuso. But in Palestine, the Palestinian people abahlala eOrlando can't drive on Killer Road. They are not allowed. If they drive on that road, the Israeli military will shoot their car. Now, the children of Palestine are not allowed to go to DOCC because DOCC is owned by the Israeli people. So they can't even use it for their cultural activities. Now, they also do the following. When they decide that Abasaifuni bomb town, bayo akhela ma-Israeli bomb town, bayafika banisuse no abo bana bahlale bomb town. Now, if you were in Palestine, the Israeli were going to remove all of you from bomb town, banlahlele mshenguvile, ba-akhele ama-Israeli izindlu in your land. Nina nihambe niyohlala ematenteni nemikhukhwini emshenguvile. Now, that is how the Israeli government is treating the Palestinians in their own land. From 1967, they've been doing all this to them. They will also decide that nina nihlala nihamba niye Orlando West nikhululekile, nisuke Orlando and cross over easily. Whether uhamba ngale bridge noma uhamba ngapha e-police station ungena udouble up ngase-Pelican or uhamba ngale Orlando Stadium, then the Israeli will decide it's sebayasdina le movement yalabantu. Then they will build a wall on Killer Road so that ningasayeqi near Orlando West. Build a very long wall to separate the people of Orlando East and the people of Orlando East. Now, the children who used to go through by a school in the Pensikani, Orlando West, can no longer go through Lendlela Yoguoka. Now they must take an hour to travel to school because now there's a war. The Israelis will again decide that I'm a Palestinian this month and now the state of Israel closed water deliberately Baba Valela Manzi for 3 months. Now when you get to Gaza and Ramallah, and thanks God I had the opportunity to visit Palestine in 2016. When you enter there, you now see Mawubona Jojo tank, phezu kwezindlu, then so yazi ukuthi I'm now in Palestinian territory. Ngoba they must trap rainwater, harvest water, in case the Israelis decide ukuthi bayabafalela amanzi. Babeke nama-solar, solar panels. Because anytime the Israeli government decides ukuthi kuyabanda November manje, because their winter runs around November, December, January, February, ayifanele yethu bayabavalela umhlakasi so that they don't have electricity for the next 4 months, and they don't care. Now, these are the conditions in which the children of Palestine have been living under. And there's nothing in the Bible that justifies the Israeli government to rule over Palestine. Now let's go back to the Bible. The Bible then says there's a place called Jerusalem in the Bible. I know Bugula doesn't believe in the Bible. Maranani Namas Pumezola, so it's not we can't expect a Lord to believe in Kulu. Mamas na check it back, I'm definitely sure Now, going back into the Bible, there's a place called Jerusalem. And Jerusalem existed long before the arrival of the Jews in Palestine. Long before Israel was there, Jerusalem was there. There's a city called Bethlehem, just next to Jerusalem. It's a place in which Jesus was born. And Jesus, by the way, was not the only prophet. He was amongst the prophets. Because the Islams had their own prophet. And that prophet was Prophet Muhammad, who also walked in Palestine. The only thing that this Bible doesn't tell us is where is our prophet, because I believe there was our prophet somewhere who had the same hair as mine and yours. But deliberately, the writers and the authors would not have spoken to that prophet. Because why should the Jews have a prophet? Why should the Palestinians or the Arabic have a prophet and we don't have a prophet? There's a disjuncture somewhere. If you follow the religion of the Chinese, you'd find that they had their own prophet. Where is our prophet? Now, I'm explaining these things because I want you to understand that long before the state of Israel was established in 1947, before the birth of Christ, Bethlehem existed. Jerusalem existed. But who lived in that land before the birth of Christ? It was the Palestinians who lived in that land. So I thought I must explain the same way that before Jan van Riebeck arrived here, and they want to tell us there was no one, it's a lie. We were already here. Our people were here. Whether in the Cape it was the Khoisan, whether in the Eastern Cape and the Ponduland it was the Xhosa people, we were here. Sikukuni was here when the white men arrived. In fact, at the Limpopo province, the dominance at that time of those that entered our country was more from the German origin. That is why they ended up taking over Namibia, because it was nearer to the Limpopo province. All that the history of Sikukuni, you'll find that in fact the Germans were somewhere there. And this is our history that we must be proud of. It's the same thing with the Palestinian people. They took their land. They took everything that they had. To an extent that now they even manage the population of the Palestinians that it cannot exceed 6 million. Every time it shows to be increasing, there's an immediate bombing of whether Gaza or the West Bank, so that they manage the population not to increase beyond 6 million. Because if it increases beyond 6 million, it will then threaten the population of the Jews. Now, the struggle of Palestine is the same as the struggle in South Africa. We were not fighting the white man, but we were fighting the system of apartheid. In Palestine, the same way we are agitating for the freedom of the Palestinian, but not the fight against the Jews. Why? There are Jews in Palestine and Israel who are pro the struggle of the Palestinian people. The same way that in South Africa, in our struggle, we had the same Afrikaners who were supporting the struggle for the liberation of the African people. And you know them. Navaza, Abu Haneko, is African. A perfect example. Later, other liberal whites also joined our struggle. Ojo Slovo, Nyabas. Because our struggle was not against a race, a person, but against the system of apartheid. Now, the Palestinian people's struggle is not against the Jews, but it's against the system of the state of Israel. That is why in the solution that is being proposed by the PLO, which is the Palestinian Liberation Organization, is that there must be a two-state solution in Palestine, so that we agree that Orlando iyonke kuzaba umhlaba wamaJuda and let them govern themselves. Orlando West nezola kuzaba umhlaba wama-Palestinian and the Palestinians must govern themselves. That's the solution that's on the table. But there's also a proposal of a solution that says, let's build one nation of Palestine and elect a democratic government that will rule over Palestine, regardless of being Jew or Arabic or Palestinian. But a Palestine state, a government of Palestine that is inclusive of all citizens of Palestine. The same way we said we are going to build a democratic government in 1994 that includes all of us, white and black, and that is why our constitution and the preamble of the Constitution of the Republic says South Africa belongs to all of us who live in it, black and white. Now, Comrade Chair, my input today was to open up your debate in understanding the Palestinian war. And all of us, as black people in particular, we must stand with the struggle of the Palestinian people. Their pain and their suffering, it's our pain. As of today, over 12,000 children have been killed by the Israeli military machinery. Women have been slaughtered by the Israeli military machinery. Why are they being killed? They are being killed for fighting for freedom, to govern themselves and nothing else. And by the way, we have Christians in Palestine who are Palestinian, Arabic, and believe in Now don't confuse Christianity and the struggle of the Palestinian people. The Christians in Palestine are also in the forefront of the struggle for the freedom of Palestinian people. Let's bring it closer to home. In Limpopo, Muhau might not know. But in fact, in South Africa, we've got what we call black Jews. And majority of that nation is very small and is found in the north of Limpopo, of South Africa, which is the Limpopo province. Majority of them are found in the Venda-speaking people. And they do understand that they will also stand up and fight for the freedom of the Palestinian people, because we are not fighting the Jews. We are fighting the system of apartheid Israel. We are fighting against Zionism. And that's all what this fight is about. It was about fighting against apartheid. They are also fighting against apartheid. And we must stand up and support the Palestinian people. I think I've explained this war. I've explained this contradiction in the most basic, simple terms for all of you to understand what it means. In conclusion, the African National Congress is faced with a big task. And the task is to govern South Africa in 2024. The question we must ask, why should the ANC govern South Africa? And have we answered that question as members of the ANC? Because when you leave this room, you must not go to your neighbors and explain why they should vote for the ANC. The ANC liberated this country, or rather, the ANC guided the masses of our country to liberation. And the ANC has over time spent time to clarify what do we mean when we say we are building a nation. It's the ANC that over time was preoccupied with why black people must be free and have a right to self-determination. It is the ANC that has been preoccupied about the education of a black child since its inception in 1912. And that is why it was easy for the ANC to say in 2017, we are now declaring free tertiary education in the country. Because we have always been preoccupied about the education of a black child. It is the ANC that has been preoccupied about the growth of the black middle class in South Africa since we took power in 1994. Now we don't realize that this meeting today is held in a suburb where in fact prior to 1994 we would not have had this meeting here. Ngabo sihlezi lapha kwaTata, remember Tata lapha eOrlando. Ngabo sihlezi lapha number 4505. Siphethe workshop lapha ya. Richayisana rithulana plekele gananyana. But it's because of the policies of the ANC that transformed society and allowed for free movement of our people, that you can choose any place you wish to stay in. That's the program of the African National Congress. Now, we see young people leaving the ANC. Some of them joined the EFF. They left the ANC Youth League. But they thought leaving the ANC Youth League still makes them revolutionary in nature and in content, when in fact, they're not revolutionary. In fact, their departure from the Youth League exposed them that in fact, they're not revolutionary. That is why they can wear red overalls, and underneath the red overalls is Gucci and Versace, because all what defines them is material things, not transformation of our society. So they're not revolutionary in any way. And all the slogans that they shout are actually counter-revolutionary in content and in everything. And I'll make a simple example. The EFF today says, in fact, they stole the slogan of the Youth League.
Yeah.
The ANC Youth League said, economic freedom in our lifetime. They stole it. They even named themselves Economic Freedom because when they left the Youth League, they stole everything that the ANC Youth League was about. Because they have no content. That is why today the EFF can stand up and say, we stand with Mkhwebane, we believe Mkhwebane is the right public protector. Then they come back and say, no, public protector Mkhwebane must go. She's incompetent. Then they stand up today and give a membership form to join the EFF. There's no content. There's no integrity. That's what the EFF represents in South Africa. Then you've got black people who associate with the Democratic Alliance. And then some of them, Solim Semango, comes out publicly and says he is educated today because of his own efforts. Let me tell you the truth. Outside the policies of the ANC, my children would not have had degrees. Your children who now go to free schools would have suffered to gain access to school. That is why we belong to COSAS. It was not by accident that I joined COSAS. I joined it because I was faced with realities on a day-to-day basis at school. We demanded school fees that our parents never had. We demanded textbooks that our parents could not afford. We demanded uniform that our parents could not afford. And we had to fight that struggle. Now somebody comes and say, I'm qualified because of my own efforts. It is as a result of the policies of the ANC. And that is why, as I sit down, we must vote for the African National Congress because we have not completed our job. And our job, when we say we have completed our job, it's when a girl child leaves his mother's home at 10 o'clock at night and says, Mama, I'm going to Moja, love. I'll be back at 4 o'clock in the morning. And the child walks throughout Orlando East with no fear, with a phone in hand, then we'd have achieved our liberation. So our work is not done, but we are going there. Thank you, Comrade Chair.